He always exchanged words with everybody because it didn't matter what anybody was doing in and around the estate here and everywhere else. They all meant a lot to him, and he always took a very personal interest in everything that they were doing.
For decades, the corridors of Buckingham Palace have been built on a foundation of absolute silence, an unwritten code where personal feelings are buried beneath the heavy weight of crown duty and royal protocol. Among all the figures who mastered this art of quiet endurance, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, stood as the ultimate exemplar, a woman who always exchanged words with everybody because it didn't matter what anybody was doing in and around the estate. They all meant a lot to the institution, and she always took a very personal interest in everything that they were doing. For years, she played it perfectly cool, stayed completely diplomatic, smiled through immense underlying tension, and kept the royal family's dirtiest laundry buried deep behind thick palace walls. But the era of quiet compliance has officially come to an end, as Sophie finally breaks her silence on Meghan Markle in a manner that insiders are calling absolutely savage. A bombshell documentary, explosive royal biographies, and freshly leaked insider accounts have permanently peeled back the heavy velvet curtain of the monarchy, and what lies underneath is a staggering collection of years of rejection, deep-seated fury, and undeniable receipts. This has officially become Sophie's defining moment, and she is making it abundantly clear to the world that she is no longer holding back. To truly grasp the tectonic significance of Sophie's silence breaking, it is absolutely essential to understand the reality of what she originally offered to Meghan Markle, and the cold, calculated way Meghan chose to respond to that gesture. A highly publicized documentary titled Royal Peacemaker Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, has highlighted the deeply supportive, maternal role Sophie previously played in helping Kate Middleton navigate her incredibly turbulent early years as a new member of the royal family. Crucially, however, this broadcast also pulled back the veil on a much darker chapter, revealing that Meghan Markle allegedly and deliberately declined an identical offer of guidance and sisterly protection. This presentation was far from a mere public relations tribute, offering instead a meticulously well-researched account of Sophie's remarkable, steady rise within the monarchy and the immense challenges that she overcame along the way. Throughout the narrative, Meghan Markle's name is mentioned multiple times, painting a vivid picture of a missed opportunity that changed the course of royal history. Royal commentators have noted that Sophie approached both Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle with open arms, expressing a genuine, heartfelt willingness to be a mentor of sorts when she saw these younger, non-royal women marrying into the complex machinery of the firm. Sophie was genuinely happy to offer her guidance because she had quite literally seen it all. This is a vital point to remember, as Sophie did not simply enter royal life with a perfect, unblemished record. After marrying Prince Edward, she made her own share of devastating early mistakes, including a highly publicized public relations misstep involving a ruthless tabloid sting operation. Yet, instead of running away, she emerged from the fire wiser, stronger, and more trusted than almost anyone else within the institution. She possessed invaluable, real-world insights to share and was willing to provide Meghan with a masterclass in survival completely for free. According to high-level royal insiders, Sophie and Meghan spent hours together in private, deeply discussing various topics regarding the intense pressures of public life. Meghan initially had a massive volume of questions, and Sophie, deeply understanding the profound difficulties of transitioning from a commoner and an American actress to a working British royal, offered her wisdom without any hesitation or hidden agenda. Sophie initially found Meghan to be immensely likable, highly engaging, and charismatic, telling her explicitly that she could call her personal line at any time of the day or night whenever she needed advice about dealing with some of the much trickier, more traditional royals. However, insiders expressed profound shock when that intimate, hours-long conversation turned out to be the absolute last thing they would ever hear from Meghan Markle. After spending an immense amount of time and emotional energy coaching Meghan, Sophie was essentially ghosted without a single word of explanation. Despite the deep conversations and the genuine human connection they seemed to share, Meghan simply chose never to follow up. It would have been a normal courtesy to receive a return invitation to Frogmore Cottage, where Meghan was living with Prince Harry at the time, but absolutely nothing came. No phone call, no text message, just a deafening, icy silence that sent a clear signal through the palace hallways. This brutal contrast ultimately defined much of the psychological warfare that followed within the family, establishing a clear line where Kate Middleton accepted the hand of tradition and guidance, while Meghan Markle chose to isolate herself, believing she could navigate the storm entirely on her own terms. The ripple effect of this historic snub has now been laid bare for millions of viewers to see side by side in unflattering cinematic detail, proving that the divide between these women was never about simple personality clashes, but about a fundamental respect for the institution itself. Sophie's journey from her marriage to Prince Edward to assuming a cornerstone position within the monarchy portrays her as the ultimate anchor, the person younger royals desperately need when learning how the family operates under extreme scrutiny. With Kate, this silent mentorship worked beautifully, growing into a powerful, quiet alliance inside Buckingham Palace, where Kate listened, learned, and transformed into one of the most effective working royals the monarchy has seen in a generation. But when the focus shifts back to Meghan, the entire tone of the royal household darkens into a story of absolute defiance and missed opportunities. The silent architectural split within the royal family became completely undeniable when the public gaze was forced to look at the massive chasm separating the fates of the two modern duchesses, a reality that Sophie's explosive documentary laid bare with absolute clinical precision. This critical turning point addresses the devastating ripple effect of that initial American snub, showcasing how a major television production has permanently framed the structural damage for millions of global viewers to dissect in excruciating side-by-side detail. In the highly calculated world of the British monarchy, every gesture, every look, and every invitation rejected carries the weight of a geopolitical statement, and what Meghan Markle dismissed as an unnecessary interference from an older royal was, in reality, the golden key to surviving the relentless machinery of the British press. Sophie's remarkable transition from her relatively quiet 1999 wedding to Prince Edward into assuming a massive, cornerstone role within the operational monarchy establishes her as the ultimate institutional anchor, the precise blueprint of how a commoner can successfully transform into an indispensable pillar of the crown. With Kate Middleton, this invisible, sisterly mentorship functioned with absolute flawlessness, growing from tentative backstage conversations into a deeply powerful, highly visible alliance inside the historic walls of Buckingham Palace. To understand the sheer depth of this connection, one must visualize the daily reality of royal duties under intense public scrutiny, where Sophie and Kate could be seen walking perfectly side by side at major state events. Sophie gently placing a steadying, reassuring hand on Kate's back during moments of extreme psychological pressure, and the two women building a genuine, unbreakable friendship that has quietly become one of the most formidable power structures in the modern court. Kate listened with humility, learned the intricate, unwritten rules of the palace, and has consequently transformed into the single most effective, beloved working royal the monarchy has produced in over a generation, a phenomenon that royal experts now openly refer to as the definitive Sophie effect. The documentary places a massive, unwavering emphasis on this specific relationship with Catherine, now the Princess of Wales, painting a beautiful picture of Sophie acting as a reliable, steeled shoulder to lean on while the future queen desperately adjusted to the staggering weight of her new global destiny. Then, with a chilling cinematic shift, the narrative forces its lens back onto Meghan Markle, and the entire atmosphere of the story darkens into a grim tale of unforced errors, burning bridges, and staggering social hubris. Senior royal commentators have explicitly confirmed that Sophie went out of her way to meet Meghan on multiple private occasions, looking her directly in the eyes and telling her with absolute sincerity that anything she could do, any piece of advice she could offer to make the transition easier, Meghan only had to ask. Yet, despite these profound, deeply vulnerable offers of solidarity from a woman who had herself survived the worst of the tabloid wolves. Sophie was left completely bewildered and insulted when she was never once invited back to Frogmore Cottage, the Windsor residence where Prince Harry and Meghan were aggressively plotting their departure from the family. This was not a trivial, everyday social slight that could be laughed off over tea. In the rigid, ancient hierarchy of the British court, where access, deep trust, and mutual respect are the only currencies that matter, ignoring a direct, extended hand from someone as universally revered and trusted as Sophie is an act of overt institutional defiance. Whether Meghan intended it as a personal insult or merely viewed Sophie as beneath her global celebrity status, the gesture sent a massive, irreversible shockwave through the senior echelons of the family, signaling that the incoming Duchess had absolutely no intention of respecting the established order or learning from those who came before her. The late Queen Elizabeth II famously viewed Sophie as the ultimate safe pair of hands, a rock-solid, completely reliable confidant who could be trusted with the crown's deepest secrets, making her the ultimate judge of character within the family. Therefore, when Meghan Markle chose to completely freeze Sophie out of her life, she wasn't just ghosting an aunt-in-law. She was actively rejecting the hand of the Queen's most trusted ally, a woman whom King Charles now considers to be his ultimate secret weapon in maintaining the stability of the entire monarchy. The documentary does not even need to state these conclusions explicitly, as it masterfully allows the stark, bleeding contrast between Kate's soaring institutional success and Meghan's self-imposed California exile to speak entirely for itself. This structural friction eventually culminated in what is now widely considered one of the most explosive, defining moments of public retaliation in recent royal history, an event that completely shattered Sophie's reputation as a passive bystander. Following Harry and Meghan's catastrophic nuclear interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021, where they leveled devastating, unsubstantiated accusations of institutional racism, systemic cruelty, and deliberate psychological isolation against the monarchy, the palace was thrown into a state of unprecedented existential crisis. While the world's media scrambled to dissect the radioactive fallout of the Sussexes' claims, Sophie and Prince Edward stepped directly into the media spotlight to deliver a masterclass in royal disdain. When a bold journalist pointedly asked them about their reactions to the explosive Oprah broadcast, Prince Edward looked completely blank and delivered the now legendary line, "Oprah who?" which was immediately followed by Sophie laughing effortlessly and firing back, "What interview?" Those 8 short, razor-sharp words did more damage to the Sussex brand than any official palace press release ever could, sending a deafening, unmistakable message across the Atlantic that the working monarchy did not take Meghan's dramatic allegations seriously and was entirely willing to feign total ignorance of one of the most powerful media tycoons on the planet just to put the regular actress back in her place. This calculated display of absolute indifference resonated deeply with palace loyalists, the British establishment, and the tabloid press, but it also lit a fuse of absolute fury within the Sussex camp. A fury that would find its voice 2 years later through the pages of Omid Scobie's highly controversial, venomous royal expose titled Endgame. Scobie fiercely attacked Sophie and Edward for those 8 words, claiming that their public dismissal of the world's most successful black media woman made them look incredibly stuffy, dangerously out of touch, and casually bigoted at worst. But what Scobie and his American patrons failed to realize was that Sophie's icy, public laughter was not a clumsy, accidental gaffe. It was a deeply deliberate, weaponized manifestation of years of suppressed frustration from a woman who had offered her heart and her wisdom to a newcomer, only to be discarded like a piece of useless palace furniture. And when the history of this great royal feud is finally written, those 8 words will stand as the moment the monarchy's secret weapon officially drew her line in the sand. If the iconic Oprah who moment was the definitive moment Sophie drew a sharp line in the sand, then the publication of Endgame was Omid Scobie stomping all over it with absolute malice, triggering a structural chain reaction within the palace that changed the dynamic of the royal family forever. According to high-level royal insiders, Sophie's reaction to this calculated literary attack was far from gentle or passive. When Scobie's book was unleashed upon the global public, a senior royal member was reportedly completely unhappy about remaining silent beneath the weight of such damaging claims. Sources close to the palace confirmed that Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, was entirely furious with the vicious allegations made by Scobie in the book. This wasn't merely a case of being mildly disappointed or quietly annoyed. It was a state of burning fury because Sophie had spent decades meticulously rebuilding her public reputation from scratch after facing brutal tabloid difficulties in the early 2000s. She had successfully transformed herself into one of the most trusted, respected, and hardest-working royals in modern history, standing proudly right behind King Charles and Prince William. To suddenly find herself elevated to the prestigious title of Duchess of Edinburgh, only to be publicly portrayed as a casually bigoted woman by an author with documented, undeniable ties to Harry and Meghan, was an insult she could not tolerate. Scobie went even further, claiming that Sophie had noticeably and deliberately ignored Meghan Markle outside Westminster Abbey during the late Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral, suggesting that both Queen Camilla and Kate Middleton happily followed suit in ice-cold isolation of the Duchess of Sussex. This specific accusation carries an enormous, dangerous weight, as the late Queen's funeral was arguably the most-watched global television event of the decade, where every single frame of footage was intensely analyzed and every micro-interaction scrutinized by billions of pairs of eyes. To assert in a published volume that Sophie deliberately cold-shouldered Meghan during a moment of profound national mourning was a calculated attempt to destroy her lifelong dedication to diplomatic dignity. While Sophie's administrative team swiftly denied these claims, insisting that the original Oprah remark was nothing more than an inside joke among family, Sophie herself chose a completely different, far more devastating approach to counter the narrative. Instead of issuing a tearful public statement, calling a frantic press conference, or sitting down for a defensive television interview to clarify her character, she chose the path of absolute, relentless execution of duty. She kept working harder than ever before, becoming exponentially more visible on the global stage, taking on a massive wave of international engagements, complex charitable causes, and highly sensitive diplomatic missions, allowing her flawless work ethic to speak infinitely louder than any public relations defense ever could. This was precisely her grand strategy because every single time Sophie shows up in a crisp uniform, visits a charity, or represents the crown abroad without a multi-million-dollar Netflix deal or a scandalous tell-all memoir, she creates a devastating public contrast with the self-exiled couple in California. This ultimate victory of silent duty was beautifully solidified by King Charles through a major title promotion that served as a polite, devastating public signal regarding Meghan's permanent replacement. Sophie and Edward were officially elevated to the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, a monumental title change that carried profound institutional meaning. This prestigious title, which historically belonged to Prince Philip, was widely believed to be destined for Prince Harry and Meghan had they chosen to stay and serve the nation. Instead, because of their dramatic departure, it went directly to the woman who actually stayed to do the work. Palace friends have openly commented that Sophie is profoundly relieved she no longer has to curtsy to Meghan Markle under any circumstances, as the acquisition of this senior title officially removes that awkward obligation forever, allowing Sophie to avoid showing unearned institutional respect to someone who abandoned her duties to criticize the family from afar. Sophie has been incredibly bold about the significance of this shift, and when the media aggressively suggested that the monarchy was in a state of terminal crisis due to the missing star power of the Sussexes, Sophie pointedly asked the press, "What did people think we were doing beforehand?" Showcasing her sharp wit and her absolute refusal to let her decades of quiet service be overshadowed by Hollywood drama. This brings the entire saga to the present moment with the grand release of the documentary Royal Peacemaker, a broadcast that marks the absolute conclusion of a long, painful conversation. The framing viewed by millions of households worldwide establishes a permanent historical record, showing that while one woman chose a path of commercial brand deals and temporary celebrity in California, the other stayed in the trenches of duty, earning the ultimate trust of King Charles, the deep friendship of the future Queen Kate, and a permanent legacy as the unbreakable stabilizing force that kept the British monarchy united while others walked away.